The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Ethan Cole stepped into the glittering chaos of the company's annual holiday party. With one thought: 2 hours, then home. He'd promised his daughter Lily he'd be back before her bedtime story, and Ethan Cole never broke promises to his daughter. But across the crowded penthouse venue, CEO Victoria Hale, the woman who'd never spoken more than 3 words to him, was about to collapse in front of 200 employees, and the choice Ethan made in the next 60 seconds would detonate both their carefully constructed lives in ways neither could imagine. If you're watching from your city tonight, drop a comment below and hit that like button. I want to see just how far this story travels, because what happens next is going to take us through jealousy, judgment, redemption, and a kind of love that neither of them saw coming. Stay with me until the end. Ethan had learned long ago that invisibility was a survival skill. At Hale Industries, where glass walls separated the executive floor from the operational levels, like a physical manifestation of hierarchy, people like Ethan, facilities managers who fixed what broke and cleaned what others dirtied, existed in a kind of parallel dimension. Executives walked past him discussing million-dollar contracts while he replaced light bulbs. Interns barely glanced up from their phones as he emptied their trash. And that was fine. Ethan preferred it that way. The holiday party was held on the 40th floor in a space usually reserved for investor presentations and board meetings. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline like an expensive painting, all glittering lights and infinite possibility. Inside, the room pulsed with carefully curated festivity. A jazz quartet in the corner, catering staff circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, decorations that whispered elegant rather than screamed Christmas. Ethan stood near the back wall, nursing a ginger ale and counting down the minutes until he could politely escape. His suit, purchased secondhand 3 years ago for his wife's funeral, still fit, though the shoulders pulled slightly when he moved. He'd shaved carefully that morning, combed his dark hair back, made himself presentable, not because he cared what anyone here thought, but because Maya had raised him better than to show up looking like he didn't respect the occasion. God, he missed her. 3 years, and certain moments still hit like fresh grief. Ethan, right? He turned to find Jennifer Kim from HR smiling at him, wineglass in hand. She was one of the few people in the building who'd ever made eye contact with him. That's right, he said. You settling in okay? I know you just started in September. Jennifer's smile widened with surprise. You remembered. Most people don't even know my name yet. You asked me about the best coffee shops near the building on your second day, Ethan said. Recommended the one on 5th with the good pastries. And you were absolutely right. I've been back 6 times. Jennifer tilted her head, studying him with open curiosity. You're not really the party type, are you? Is it that obvious? Only to someone paying attention. She gestured toward the center of the room, where clusters of employees laughed and networked with the performative enthusiasm of people who knew their bosses were watching. Most of the facility staff didn't even come tonight. I figured I should make an appearance, Ethan said. Show some team spirit. What he didn't say, he'd come because the invitation had been hand-delivered to every employee, including him, and refusing felt like drawing unnecessary attention to himself. Better to show up, be seen, slip away quietly. Jennifer opened her mouth to respond, but her attention suddenly shifted past Ethan's shoulder. Her expression changed, not quite alarm, but concern mixed with professional discretion. Oh no, she murmured. Ethan turned. Across the room, near the windows overlooking the city, Victoria Hale was holding court with a group of executives. Even from 30 feet away, she commanded attention in a way that seemed almost gravitational. She wore a black dress that was both severe and elegant, her dark hair pulled back in a style that emphasized the sharp angles of her face. Everything about her projected control, the way she stood, the way she held her wine glass, the way her eyes moved across the crowd with the calculation of someone who missed nothing. Victoria Hale had built Hale Industries from a struggling mid-sized firm into a powerhouse of corporate efficiency. She was 42, ruthlessly competent, and according to office gossip, utterly untouchable. No spouse, no children, no apparent interest beyond quarterly reports and market dominance. People respected her. Some feared her. Nobody claimed to know her. Right now, though, something was off. Victoria's posture was slightly too rigid, her gestures a fraction too expansive. When she raised her wine glass to her lips, her hand wavered just enough for Ethan to notice. The executives around her seemed oblivious, laughing at something she'd said, but Ethan had spent 3 years reading his daughter's subtle signals, the difference between tired and sick, uncomfortable and scared. He'd learned to see what people tried to hide. Victoria Hale was drunk, not falling down drunk, not yet, but heading there fast. "That's her 4th glass in the last hour," Jennifer said quietly. "I've been keeping count because I've literally never seen her drink more than one at these things. She's always so controlled." "Maybe she's celebrating something," Ethan offered, though he didn't quite believe it. "Or forgetting something." Jennifer's professional discretion won out. She set down her wine glass. "I should probably—" Victoria laughed then, loud and sharp-edged, and the sound cut through the ambient party noise like breaking glass. Several conversations paused. People glanced over, uncertain whether to laugh along or pretend they hadn't noticed. Then Victoria stepped backward, her heel catching on absolutely nothing, and her perfect control shattered. Ethan was moving before he'd consciously decided to move. He covered the distance in seconds, weaving through clusters of people with the economy of motion that came from years of navigating crowded spaces. Victoria's knee buckled, her wine glass tilted. One of the executives reached out a hand but hesitated, clearly uncertain about the propriety of touching the CEO. Ethan didn't hesitate. He caught Victoria's arm just above the elbow, his other hand bracing her shoulder, steadying her before she could fall. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, and he caught that too, somehow, his reflexes calibrated by 3 years of catching dropped sippy cups and stumbling toddlers. "Whoa, easy," he said quietly, keeping his voice low. "I've got you." Victoria blinked up at him, her eyes struggling to focus. This close, he could smell the wine on her breath, see the careful makeup that didn't quite hide the exhaustion underneath. Her pupils were dilated, her breathing slightly unsteady. "Who?" she started, her voice sharp even through the alcohol haze. "I don't need—" "I know," Ethan said, "but maybe we should get you some water anyway." For a moment, Victoria looked like she might argue. Then something in her expression shifted, pride giving way to the kind of bone-deep weariness that Ethan recognized because he'd worn it himself for months after Maya died. The fight went out of her shoulders. "Water," she said slowly, as if testing the word. "Yes, that's sensible." The executives who'd been surrounding her stood frozen in that particular paralysis of people who desperately don't want to get involved in something awkward. A few phones had appeared, cameras pointed their direction. Ethan felt Victoria stiffen as she noticed. "Let's get out of the spotlight," Ethan murmured. "Can you walk?" "Of course I can walk," Victoria said, but when she tried to step forward, her balance wavered again. Ethan kept his grip steady but unobtrusive, guiding her toward the side hallway that led to the restrooms and a small service area. Jennifer appeared at his elbow with a glass of water and a napkin. "Conference room B is empty," she said quietly. "Second door on the left. Thanks." Ethan navigated them through the crowd with practiced efficiency, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed. Victoria moved with him, her pride forcing her spine straight even as she leaned subtly against his supporting arm. When they reached the conference room, he guided her to one of the leather chairs and handed her the water. "Drink slowly," he said. Victoria stared at the glass like it had personally offended her. "I don't need a babysitter." "No, ma'am, but you do need water." Something about his tone, respectful but immovable, made Victoria actually pick up the glass. She took a careful sip, then another. Ethan stepped back, giving her space, but stayed close enough to catch her if she started to fall again. The room felt very quiet after the noise of the party. Through the glass wall, frosted for privacy but not soundproof, they could hear the muted buzz of continued celebration. Nobody had followed them. Nobody, Ethan suspected, wanted to. "Your facilities," Victoria said abruptly. "I've seen you. You fixed the light in my office last month." "Yes, ma'am." "Stop calling me that." She took another sip of water, her hand steadier now. "It makes me feel ancient." "Ms. Hale, then." "That's not much better?" She studied him with the kind of focus that probably made executives squirm during performance reviews. "You have a daughter." Ethan went very still. "How did you know that?" I notice things. Victoria's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. You keep her drawings in your office, the good ones, a 5-year-old's artwork, princess castles and rainbow cats. You display them like they're museum pieces. They are museum pieces, Ethan said quietly. To me. Something flickered across Victoria's face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. She looked down at the water glass. My father used to say that about my school projects, before he decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore. The vulnerability in those words was so unexpected that Ethan didn't know how to respond. He just stood there, watching Victoria Hale, the woman who commanded boardrooms and terrified competitors, look suddenly, achingly human. I don't usually drink, Victoria said after a long silence. Tonight was an exception. Bad day? Bad decade. She finished the water in 3 long swallows. But that's not your concern. No, Ethan agreed. But I'm here anyway. Victoria set down the glass with careful precision, as if proving to herself that her hands were steady. You can go back to the party now. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. Ethan could see it in the way she held herself too carefully, the way her eyes kept losing focus. But he also knew that saying so would only make her more defensive. I was actually planning to leave, he said. Promised my daughter I'd be home for bedtime. Then don't let me keep you. Ethan nodded and turned toward the door. His hand was on the handle when Victoria spoke again. Wait. He looked back. Victoria had stood up, one hand braced on the conference table, and the room tilted around her in a way that clearly caught her off guard. Her face went pale. I think, she swayed slightly, I might need a moment. Ethan was across the room in 2 strides. When did you last eat? This morning. Breakfast meeting. I've been... Victoria gestured vaguely. Busy. Okay. Ethan made a decision. I'm calling you a car. I drove here. Then your car can stay in the garage tonight. He pulled out his phone. Where do you live? Victoria rattled off an address in the Westbrook district, the kind of neighborhood where Ethan's entire annual salary wouldn't cover 3 months' rent. He pulled up a rideshare app, but before he could request a car, Victoria's hand shot out and gripped his wrist. No strangers, she said, and there was something almost desperate in her voice. I can't. If someone sees me like this, takes a photo. She didn't need to finish. Ethan understood. Victoria Hale's reputation was built on control and competence. One photo of the CEO, drunk and disoriented, could become 1,000 think pieces about whether women could handle executive pressure. All right, Ethan said quietly. Then I'll drive you home myself. Victoria blinked at him. You don't have to. I know, but I'm not leaving you here alone, and I'm not putting you in a car with a stranger. He met her eyes steadily. So either you let me help, or I'm calling Jennifer back in here to help, and I'm guessing you'd prefer fewer witnesses. For a long moment, Victoria just stared at him. Then, finally, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Getting Victoria out of the building without drawing attention required careful maneuvering. Ethan texted Jennifer, who created a diversion by accidentally knocking over a champagne tower on the opposite side of the room. In the chaos that followed, Ethan guided Victoria through the service hallway to the freight elevator, the one the cleaning crew used, the one that went straight to the parking garage. Victoria leaned against the elevator wall, her eyes closed. This is humiliating. Nobody saw, Ethan said, and I'm not going to tell anyone. Why are you helping me? The question was so genuinely confused that it made Ethan's chest ache. Because you need help, and I'm here. That's not how the world works. Maybe not your world, Ethan said gently, but it's how mine does. His car was a 12-year-old Honda with a child seat strapped in the back and a collection of Lily's toys scattered across the floor. Victoria stared at it like she'd never seen a vehicle that wasn't German-engineered. This is your car, she said. Were you expecting a limousine? I was expecting, I don't know, something less. She gestured vaguely at the toy dinosaur on the dashboard. Less lived in? Ethan opened the passenger door. Sorry to disappoint. Victoria slid into the seat with the careful movements of someone trying very hard not to acknowledge their own unsteadiness. Ethan closed her door, walked around to the driver's side, and programmed her address into his phone's GPS. Westbrook was a 40-minute drive across the city. They'd been on the road for less than 10 minutes when Victoria spoke again. "Your wife," she said quietly. "She died." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Yes." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." "How long ago?" 3 years, car accident." He kept his eyes on the road, his voice steady. "Drunk driver ran a red light. She died on impact." Victoria was quiet for a long time. "And you're raising your daughter alone?" "Yes." "That must be—" She trailed off as if unable to find adequate words. "Hard," Ethan finished. "It's very hard. But Lily makes it worthwhile. Still, to lose someone like that, and then have to just keep going." "You don't really have a choice," Ethan said. "When you have a kid depending on you, you figure out how to keep moving forward, even when everything inside you wants to stop." Victoria turned her head to look at him, really look at him, in a way that made Ethan deeply uncomfortable, like she was seeing something she hadn't expected. "You're not what I thought," she said finally. "What did you think?" "That you were just furniture, backdrop, the invisible people who keep buildings running." She closed her eyes. "God, that sounds terrible when I say it out loud." "It's honest," Ethan said. "Most people think that way. They just don't admit it. Does that make it better or worse?" "Neither. It just is." They drove in silence for a while. The city scrolled past the windows, late-night traffic, illuminated storefronts, people living their lives. Victoria's breathing had evened out, and Ethan thought she might have fallen asleep until she spoke again. "I haven't been drunk in 20 years, she said. Not since I decided that control was the only thing that mattered." "What changed tonight?" Victoria laughed, but it sounded more like grief. "I got the numbers back from our annual employee satisfaction survey." "Do you know what they said about me?" Ethan didn't answer. Effective but unapproachable, respected but not liked, competent but cold. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. 42 years old, and the most consistent feedback about me is that I'm good at my job, but nobody actually wants to work with me. Nobody wants to know me. "You built an incredible company," Ethan offered. "I built a prison," Victoria countered. "I traded everything else, friends, relationships, any kind of life outside work, for quarterly earnings reports and market share. And tonight, looking at all those people at the party, watching them laugh and connect and actually seem to enjoy each other's company, I realized I don't know how to do that anymore. I don't even know if I ever did." The pain in her voice was so raw that Ethan had to resist the urge to pull over and just sit with her in it. Instead, he kept driving, letting her words settle in the quiet space between them. "For what it's worth," he said finally, "I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for." Victoria made a sound that might have been a laugh. "How do you figure?" "Most people would double down. Drink more, work harder, build the walls higher. You're sitting here admitting it hurts." Ethan glanced over at her. "That takes courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." They were crossing into Westbrook now, the architecture shifting from mid-rise commercial buildings to elegant brownstones and manicured streets. This was old money territory, where buildings had doormen and parking garages required security codes. Ethan pulled up to Victoria's building, a converted historic townhouse that had probably cost more than Ethan would earn in 3 lifetimes. The facade was all clean lines and subtle lighting, the kind of place where everything was expensive precisely because it didn't need to announce its expense. He put the car in park and turned to Victoria. She was looking at her building with an expression that Ethan couldn't quite read. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not making this worse than it had to be." "You're welcome." Victoria reached for the door handle, then paused. "I'll have my car picked up tomorrow, and I'll make sure HR knows you left early for family reasons, so there's no questions." "I appreciate that." She opened the door, stepped out onto the sidewalk, and immediately swayed. Ethan was out of the car in seconds, steadying her again. "I've got it," Victoria insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "When did you last have your keys out?" Victoria patted her clutch purse, frowned, opened it, and stared at the contents like they'd personally betrayed her. "They're here. Somewhere." Ethan waited while she fumbled through the small bag. After 30 seconds of increasingly frustrated searching, he gently took the purse from her hands. "May I?" Victoria nodded, looking grateful and mortified in equal measure. Ethan found the keys immediately, a simple keychain with 2 keys and a small worn teddy bear charm that seemed wildly out of character. He held them up. "Is this building secure?" "There's a doorman inside." "Can you make it to your apartment on your own?" Victoria looked at the entrance, then back at Ethan. Something in her expression shifted, the executive mask finally cracking completely. "No," she whispered. "I don't think I can." Ethan made his second major decision of the night. "Then I'm coming up with you, just to make sure you're safe." "That's not necessary." "Ms. Hale," Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. "You can barely stand. I'm not leaving you to navigate stairs alone." Victoria opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She nodded once, sharply. The building's lobby was all marble and understated elegance. The doorman, a young man in an impeccable uniform, looked up as they entered, his professional smile faltering slightly when he saw Victoria's condition. "Ms. Hale," he said carefully, "is everything all right?" "Just tired, Marcus," Victoria said, her words only slightly slurred. "Very long day." Marcus's eyes flicked to Ethan with undisguised suspicion. Ethan couldn't blame him. From the doorman's perspective, this probably looked like exactly the kind of situation he was paid to prevent. "This is Ethan," Victoria said. "He's helping me." "Would you like me to call anyone, Ms. Hale?" "No, thank you. I'm fine." Marcus didn't look convinced, but he stepped back. "Of course. Have a good evening." They took the elevator to the 8th floor in silence. Victoria leaned against the wall, her eyes closed, breathing carefully through her nose. When the doors opened, she led Ethan down a hallway decorated with abstract art that probably cost more than his car. Her apartment was at the end of the hall. She fumbled with the keys, and Ethan gently took them from her hands and unlocked the door. The apartment was exactly what Ethan expected, and somehow still surprising. Expensive furniture arranged with impeccable taste, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city, everything clean, elegant, perfectly curated, and absolutely, completely impersonal. No photos, no books on the shelves, no plants or artwork or anything that suggested a human being actually lived here rather than just occasionally visited between business trips. It felt less like a home and more like a very expensive hotel room. "You can go now," Victoria said, but she was swaying again, her hand braced against the wall. "Where's your bedroom?" "Down the hall, second door." "I'm going to walk you there," Ethan said. "Make sure you're actually in bed before I leave. Otherwise, I'll just worry all night." Victoria laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised and genuine. "You're stubborn." "So I've been told." He guided her down the hallway to a bedroom that was as impersonal as the rest of the apartment. Large bed with white linens, empty dresser top, no personal items except a book on the nightstand that looked like it hadn't been opened in months. Victoria sat on the edge of the bed with the careful movements of someone trying very hard not to fall over. She looked up at Ethan with an expression that was almost vulnerable. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Really, you didn't have to do any of this." "I know." Ethan pulled a glass from the bathroom and filled it with water, setting it on the nightstand. "Drink this before you sleep. Take some aspirin, if you have it. You're going to have a headache tomorrow." "Voice of experience?" "Voice of having been human," Ethan said gently. He turned to leave, but Victoria's voice stopped him. "Ethan?" He looked back. "Your daughter is lucky to have you," Victoria said. "I hope she knows that." Something in Ethan's chest twisted. "I hope so too." He left Victoria sitting on her bed, closing the apartment door quietly behind him. In the elevator, in the lobby, in his car driving back across the city, Ethan tried to convince himself that this had been a simple kindness, the kind anyone would have offered, but he couldn't quite shake the image of Victoria Hale sitting in that perfect, empty apartment, looking more alone than anyone Ethan had ever seen. He made it home by 10:30. Mrs. Chen, his neighbor who watched Lily when he worked late, met him at the door with Lily asleep in her arms. "She fought it," Mrs. Chen whispered, insisted she needed to wait for Daddy's bedtime story. "I'll make it up to her tomorrow," Ethan said, carefully taking his daughter. Lily stirred but didn't wake, her small hand curling into his shirt. After Mrs. Chen left, Ethan carried Lily to her room, walls painted lavender, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, stuffed animals piled in every corner. He laid her gently in bed, pulled the blankets up, kissed her forehead. "Love you, sweetheart," he whispered. "Love you, Daddy," Lily mumbled, half asleep. "Did you have fun at the party?" "It was interesting," Ethan said, which was technically true. "Can I come to the next one?" "We'll see." Lily smiled, satisfied, and drifted back to sleep. Ethan went to his own bedroom, smaller than Lily's, furniture purchased from thrift stores and yard sales, everything second-hand except the framed photo of Maya on the nightstand. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his wife's smiling face. "I met someone tonight," he said quietly, the way he sometimes still talked to her. "She needed help. I gave it. That's all it was." But even as he said it, Ethan couldn't quite shake the feeling that something had shifted, that the simple act of catching a falling woman had set something in motion that he didn't fully understand. He thought about Victoria's words in the car. "I built a prison." He thought about her empty apartment, her perfect, lonely life. And he thought about tomorrow, when they'd both go back to work and pretend this night had never happened. Except Ethan Cole had learned, in the hardest way possible, that some nights changed everything, that some moments carved dividing lines across your life, before and after, whole and broken, alone and found. He didn't know yet which kind of night this had been. But as he turned off the light and tried to sleep, Ethan had the strangest sense that his life, his careful, controlled, protected life, had just become a great deal more complicated. And somewhere across the city, in a pristine apartment that had never felt like home, Victoria Hale was having the exact same thought. Ethan woke at 6:15 to the sound of Lily singing in her room, a made-up song about pancakes and butterflies that had no melody but infinite enthusiasm. He lay there for a moment, letting the sound wash over him, grateful as always for the resilience of children. Lily had lost her mother at 2 years old, too young to hold on to many memories, but old enough to feel the absence. Yet somehow she'd learned to find joy in small things, to wake up singing about breakfast. He rolled out of bed, pulled on jeans and a t-shirt, and shuffled to the kitchen to start coffee. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that barely fit a table. But it was home. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator. Her backpack hung by the door. Her cereal bowl with the princess on it waited in the dish drainer. "Daddy!" Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, her dark curls wild from sleep, wearing mismatched pajamas, dinosaurs on top, unicorns on bottom. "You're home! You promised bedtime story, but I fell asleep." "I know, Bug. I'm sorry. The party ran late." Ethan crouched down and opened his arms. Lily launched herself at him with the absolute trust of a 5-year-old who'd never doubted her father would catch her. "Was it fancy?" she asked into his shoulder. "Very fancy. Chandeliers and everything." "Did you dance?" "No dancing, just talking and standing around looking uncomfortable." Lily pulled back to study his face with serious eyes, Maya's eyes, brown and warm and impossibly perceptive. "You don't like parties." "Not really, no." "Me neither," Lily declared with the solidarity of someone who'd never actually been to a party. "Can we have pancakes?" "Absolutely." They fell into their Saturday morning routine, Ethan mixing batter while Lily set the table with exaggerated care, making sure the forks were perfectly straight. The radio played quietly in the background, some pop song about summer and freedom. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, catching dust motes in golden columns. This was Ethan's favorite time. Before the day got complicated, before responsibilities piled up, just him and Lily and pancakes and the comfortable silence of people who knew each other completely. His phone buzzed just as he was flipping the 3rd pancake. Ethan glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. Victoria Hale calling. He stared at it like it might explode. Why was his boss calling him at 6:45 on a Saturday morning? Had something happened? Had she reported last night? Was he about to be fired for... "Daddy, it's burning," Lily said. Ethan jerked back to reality, flipped the smoking pancake onto a plate, and answered the phone. "Hello?" "Ethan." Victoria's voice was quiet, strained. I'm sorry to call so early. I wasn't sure. I needed to speak with you. Is everything okay? There was a long pause. In the background, Ethan could hear traffic sounds, the ambient noise of a city waking up. I'm outside your building, Victoria said. I know this is inappropriate and probably crosses several professional boundaries, but I need to talk to you in person. Would that be possible? Ethan looked at Lily, who was watching him with curious eyes, then at the half-cooked pancakes, then at his own reflection in the microwave door, unshaven, exhausted, completely unprepared for whatever this was. Give me the address from last night, Victoria continued. I pulled it from my rideshare history. I'm parked outside, but I don't want to just show up at your door without permission. That seemed like it would be worse. You're here now? Ethan asked, trying to process this information. I know, I'm sorry. I can leave if this is too strange. Ethan closed his eyes. Every instinct told him this was a terrible idea. You didn't invite your boss into your home, especially not after driving her drunk across the city the night before. You maintained boundaries. You kept work and life separate. But he remembered Victoria sitting in that empty apartment, looking more lost than anyone he'd ever seen. Apartment 4B, he said. 4th floor. Elevator's broken, so you'll have to take the stairs. Thank you. I'll be right up. Ethan hung up and turned to find Lily staring at him with wide eyes. Who was that? Someone from work. She needs to talk to me about something. Is it important? I think it might be. Lily considered this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult complications. Okay, but can we still have pancakes? Absolutely. You start without me. I'll be right back. Ethan went to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, ran a hand through his hair, and tried to look like someone who hadn't just been ambushed by his CEO on a Saturday morning. When he heard the knock, he checked himself one last time in the mirror, still rumpled, still unprepared, but at least awake, and opened the door. Victoria Hale stood in his hallway looking nothing like the polished executive from every board meeting. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, no makeup. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She held 2 coffee cups from the expensive place downtown, the gesture so out of character that it made Ethan's chest ache. Hi, she said. I brought coffee as an apology for the intrusion. You didn't have to do that. I know, but I wanted to. Victoria held out one of the cups. I didn't know how you take it, so I got it black. There's cream and sugar in the bag if you need them. Ethan accepted the coffee, hyper-aware of how small his apartment must seem to someone who lived in Westbrook. He could see Victoria taking it in, the worn furniture, the crayon marks on the wall that he'd never quite managed to clean, the chaos of a home where a small child actually lived. This is cozy, Victoria said, and she sounded like she meant it. It's small, Ethan corrected, but it's ours. Before Victoria could respond, Lily appeared in the living room doorway, pancake fork in hand, staring at the stranger with undisguised curiosity. Hi, Lily said. Are you Daddy's friend from work? Victoria looked at Lily the way someone might look at an exotic animal, with fascination and complete uncertainty about appropriate interaction protocols. I'm his boss, actually, Victoria said after a pause. My name is Victoria. That's a pretty name, like a princess. Thank you. What's your name? Lily Ann Cole. I'm 5 3/4. Daddy made pancakes. Do you want some? Victoria glanced at Ethan, clearly out of her depth. Ethan just shrugged, hiding his smile. I wouldn't want to impose, Victoria said. Daddy always makes extra, Lily announced with absolute certainty. In case someone needs them. He says you should always have enough to share. Your daddy sounds very wise. He is. He knows everything, except about princesses. He's not very good at princess voices. Victoria's lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile Ethan had seen from her. That's a significant gap in his knowledge. I know, right? Lily grabbed Victoria's hand with the casual presumption of a child who'd never met a stranger she couldn't befriend. Come on, the pancakes are getting cold. Victoria looked at Ethan over Lily's head, a question in her eyes. Ethan nodded, and they followed his daughter into the kitchen. The next 20 minutes were among the strangest of Ethan's life. Victoria Hale, CEO, corporate legend, woman who'd reduced grown executives to stammering apologies, sat at his rickety kitchen table eating pancakes with his 5-year-old daughter and looking more relaxed than Ethan had ever seen her. Lily, for her part, treated Victoria like she was the most interesting person she'd met in weeks. She showed Victoria her favorite drawings on the refrigerator, explained the complex social dynamics of kindergarten, and insisted on demonstrating the proper way to make pancake smiley faces with syrup. "See? You put the eyes here and here," Lily instructed, her tongue poking out in concentration as she drizzled syrup. "And then the mouth has to be big, like this, because happy people smile big." "That's a very good smile," Victoria said seriously. "Very professional." "Thank you. Daddy taught me. He makes me smile pancakes every Saturday." Victoria looked at Ethan then, something shifting in her expression. "Every Saturday?" "It's our tradition," Ethan said. "Started after her mom died. I wanted to make sure we had something to look forward to." "My mommy's in heaven," Lily announced matter-of-factly, in the way children stated facts they'd accepted but didn't fully understand. "She watches over me from the stars. Right, Daddy?" "That's right, Bug. I miss her sometimes, but Daddy says it's okay to miss people. It means we love them." Victoria's coffee cup rattled slightly as she set it down. When she spoke, her voice was softer than Ethan had ever heard it. "Your daddy is right about that, too." Lily smiled, satisfied, and returned her attention to her pancakes. Victoria caught Ethan's eye across the table, and in that moment something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or recognition. The acknowledgement that they were both people who knew about loss, about carrying on, about finding ways to survive what shouldn't be survivable. After breakfast, Lily asked to watch cartoons. Ethan set her up in the living room with her favorite blanket and strict instructions not to jump on the furniture, then returned to the kitchen where Victoria was quietly washing dishes. "You don't have to do that," Ethan said. "I know, but you fed me, so I should contribute somehow." Victoria rinsed a plate carefully. "She's lovely. Your daughter." "Thank you. She's the best thing in my life." "I can see that." Victoria set the plate in the drainer, then turned to face Ethan fully. "I came here to apologize for last night, for putting you in that position, for making you responsible for my poor decisions." "You don't need to apologize." "I do, actually. What I did was unprofessional and unfair. You should have been home with Lily, not babysitting your intoxicated boss across the city." "You needed help," Ethan said simply. "I helped. That's all it was." Victoria shook her head. "It wasn't, though. You went far beyond what anyone could reasonably expect. You drove me home, made sure I was safe, asked nothing in return." "People don't do that. Not in my experience." "Maybe you've been meeting the wrong people. Or maybe I've been one of the wrong people." Victoria's hands gripped the edge of the sink. "I barely slept last night. I kept thinking about what you said in the car. About how you keep going forward because you don't have a choice. About responsibility and love and just showing up." Ethan waited, sensing she needed to say this without interruption. "I've spent 20 years building a career," Victoria continued, "sacrificing everything else, relationships, friendships, any kind of personal life. Because I thought success meant being untouchable, needing nothing, depending on no one. And last night, sitting in my apartment after you left, I realized I've built exactly what I aimed for. A life where nobody needs me and I need nobody. And it's completely empty." Victoria, "I don't know how to do this," she interrupted, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't know how to be human. How to connect with people. How to have a life outside of quarterly reports and market strategies. I've forgotten. Or maybe I never learned. And seeing you with Lily this morning, watching how you are with her, the gentleness, the attention, the way you make her feel like she's the center of your universe, I realized I have no idea how to love like that, how to show up like that." Tears were sliding down Victoria's face now, and she seemed almost surprised by them, wiping at her cheeks with quick, angry movements. "I'm sorry," she said. "This is inappropriate. I shouldn't be unloading on you like this." "It's okay," Ethan said gently. "Really? It's not okay. You're my employee. I'm your boss. There are boundaries." "The boundaries got complicated when I drove you home last night," Ethan pointed out. "I think we're past formality." Victoria laughed. A wet, broken sound. I suppose we are. Ethan pulled out a chair and sat down, gesturing for Victoria to do the same. After a moment's hesitation, she did. Can I tell you something? Ethan asked. Victoria nodded. After Maya died, I was exactly where you are now. Maybe worse. I had Lily, which meant I had to keep functioning, but inside I was completely shut down. I went to work, came home, took care of my daughter, and felt absolutely nothing except grief and numbness, for months. What changed? Mrs. Chen, my neighbor who watches Lily sometimes, she knocked on my door one night. I'd been crying loud enough that she could hear it through the walls. She came in, made tea, and sat with me while I fell apart. Didn't try to fix me. Didn't tell me it would get better. Just sat there and witnessed it. Ethan's hands wrapped around his coffee cup, the ceramic warm against his palms. The next day, I felt like maybe I could breathe a little easier. Not much, just a little. And Mrs. Chen kept showing up, bringing food, watching Lily, just being present. Other neighbors started doing the same. My wife's sister called every week. My old boss checked in on me. People showed up. And slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, I remembered how to be alive again. You're saying I need to let people in, Victoria said. I'm saying you can't heal in isolation. You can't build a life alone. I know that's terrifying. I know asking for help feels like weakness, but it's not. It's the bravest thing you can do. Victoria was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded on the table. I don't know how to do that, she admitted finally. I don't know how to be vulnerable with people. Start small, Ethan suggested. Start with honesty. Okay. Victoria took a shaky breath. Honest truth? I came here this morning because I was terrified. I woke up in my apartment and realized you were the only person in my life who's seen me at my worst and didn't judge me for it. The only person who helped me without wanting something in return. And I didn't know what to do with that except come find you and try to understand why. Why I helped? Why anyone would? Victoria met his eyes. In my world, everything is transactional. People are kind because they want something, a promotion, a favor, leverage. But you asked for nothing, expected nothing, and I couldn't reconcile that with everything I understand about how relationships work. Maybe your understanding is based on the wrong relationships, Ethan said gently. From the living room, they could hear Lily giggling at whatever cartoon she was watching. The sound was bright and pure, cutting through the heavy conversation like sunlight through clouds. How do you do it? Victoria asked suddenly. How do you stay kind? After losing everything, after being left alone with a toddler, after having to rebuild your entire life? How do you not become bitter? Ethan considered the question carefully. I did become bitter, he admitted. For a while. I was angry at the world, at the drunk driver, at Maya for leaving me, at myself for not being able to save her. That anger was eating me alive. What changed? Lily. Ethan's voice softened. One morning she came into my room, she was 3, maybe, and climbed into bed with me. I was crying, again, and she just put her little hand on my face and said, "It's okay, Daddy. We can be sad together. Just that. Nothing more." And I realized that she was watching me, learning from me how to handle grief, how to move through pain, and I had to decide what I wanted to teach her. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I decided I wanted to teach her that love is stronger than loss, that kindness matters even when it hurts, that people are worth showing up for even when showing up is hard. So that's what I did. That's what I still do. Not because I'm particularly noble or strong, but because I have a daughter watching me figure out how to be human. You're a better person than I am, Victoria whispered. I'm just a person, Ethan corrected. Same as you, making choices every day about who I want to be. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of confession settling between them. Then Victoria straightened slightly, wiping her eyes with careful fingers. I want to change, she said. I don't know how, but I want to. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of being the person everyone respects and nobody knows. Then change, Ethan said simply. Start today. Start small. How? Well, you're here, aren't you? Sitting in my kitchen. Being honest about how you feel, that's a start. Victoria managed a small smile. I suppose it is. And maybe, Ethan continued carefully, you could think about what you actually want your life to look like. Not what you think it should look like, or what will impress people, but what would actually make you happy. I don't know what makes me happy, Victoria admitted. Isn't that pathetic? 42 years old and I have no idea what I actually enjoy. Then maybe that's what you need to figure out. Before Victoria could respond, Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, her cartoon apparently finished. Daddy, can Victoria see my room? Lily asked. I want to show her my princess castle. Ethan looked at Victoria, giving her an out if she needed it. But Victoria surprised him. I would love to see your princess castle, she said to Lily. If that's okay with your dad. It's okay with me, Ethan said. Lily grabbed Victoria's hand again, the casual, trusting gesture that only children could pull off, and led her down the hallway. Ethan followed, watching Victoria navigate Lily's enthusiasm with awkward but genuine interest. Lily's room was an explosion of color and imagination. Purple walls, glow-in-the-dark stars, stuffed animals everywhere, and an elaborate castle made from cardboard boxes and construction paper that Ethan had helped her build over several weekends. Daddy made it, Lily explained proudly. It has towers and everything, and this is where the princess lives. She's very brave. She fights dragons. A brave princess, Victoria said, crouching down to examine the castle with serious attention. That's my favorite kind. Mine too. Most princesses just wait to be rescued, but my princess rescues herself, and sometimes she rescues other people too. She sounds remarkable. She is. Daddy says I'm like her because I'm brave too. Victoria glanced up at Ethan, then back at Lily. I think your daddy is absolutely right. They spent 20 minutes in Lily's room, Victoria listening to elaborate stories about the princess's adventures, asking questions that made Lily beam with importance, genuinely engaging with a 5-year-old's imagination in a way that Ethan wouldn't have thought possible. And watching them together, his daughter and his boss, separated by decades and life experience, but connected in this moment by simple kindness, Ethan felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the careful control he'd maintained since Maya's death, a crack in the armor he'd built to protect himself from more loss. It terrified him. Eventually, Lily's attention shifted to her art supplies, and Victoria stood up, brushing off her jeans. Thank you for showing me your room, Victoria said to Lily. And your castle. It's wonderful. You can come back and play with it sometime, Lily offered with the generosity of children. If you want. Victoria looked genuinely touched. I would like that very much. Ethan walked Victoria to the door, both of them stepping carefully around the implications of what had just happened. At the threshold, Victoria turned to face him. Thank you, she said quietly, for letting me in, for being honest with me, for not making me feel stupid for not knowing how to do this. You're not stupid, Ethan said. You're just learning. We all are. Still, Victoria pulled out her phone. Can I have your number? Your personal number, I mean, not the work one. I'd like to, I don't know, maybe call you sometime, if that's okay. Not about work, just to talk. Ethan hesitated for only a second before rattling off his number. Victoria typed it into her phone, then met his eyes. I meant what I said earlier. I want to change. I want to figure out who I am when I'm not just the CEO. And I think maybe talking to you might help with that. If you're willing. I'm willing, Ethan heard himself say. Good. Victoria smiled, a real smile, small but genuine. I should go. Let you get back to your Saturday with Lily. Drive safe. I will. Victoria paused in the doorway. You know, when I woke up this morning, I was planning to send you a very formal email thanking you for your assistance last night and asking you to keep the matter confidential. Very professional, very distant. What changed your mind? I realized I was doing exactly what I always do. Building walls, keeping distance, protecting myself from connection. Victoria's voice was soft. And then I thought about what you said, about courage. So I decided to be brave, like Lily's princess. I'm glad you did. Me too. Victoria left then, disappearing down the stairwell with a small wave. Ethan closed the door and leaned against it, his heart beating faster than it should, his mind racing with thoughts he wasn't ready to examine too closely. "Daddy?" Lily appeared beside him. "Is Victoria sad?" "I think she is, Bug. A little bit. Like you were sad after Mommy?" "Similar to that, yeah." Lily considered this with the seriousness she applied to all important matters. "We should be her friend, so she doesn't have to be sad alone." Ethan crouched down to his daughter's level, pulling her into a hug. "You know what? I think you're absolutely right." "I'm smart," Lily said matter-of-factly. "You're the smartest person I know." They spent the rest of Saturday doing normal Saturday things: library trip, playground, making dinner together. But underneath the routine, Ethan felt something shifting. The careful boundaries he'd built around his life since Maya's death were developing cracks, and he wasn't sure whether to be terrified or hopeful. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat on his couch with a beer he wasn't really drinking and stared at his phone. Victoria's number was saved now, just sitting there, representing possibility and complication in equal measure. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Thank you again for this morning, and for not making me feel like an idiot for showing up unannounced." "I know that was strange," Ethan typed back. "It was unexpected, but not unwelcome. How are you feeling?" "Hungover. Emotionally raw, but also lighter somehow, like maybe I'm not as stuck as I thought." "That's good. I meant what I said about changing, about figuring out who I am outside of work. It's going to be hard, but I think I need to do it." "You do, and you will, one step at a time." There was a pause before Victoria's next message appeared. "Can I ask you something? And you can say no if it's too weird. Go ahead. Would you be willing to have coffee with me sometime? Not at the office. Somewhere neutral. Just to talk." I realize this blurs professional lines and maybe crosses boundaries, but I don't have anyone else I can be honest with. And I think I need that right now. Someone who sees me as a person, not a position. Ethan stared at the message for a long time. Every rational part of his brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. She was his boss. Getting personally involved with her could complicate everything: his job, his stability, the careful life he'd built for Lily. But he remembered Victoria sitting in his kitchen with tears on her face, admitting she didn't know how to be happy. He remembered her crouching in Lily's room, listening to stories about brave princesses with genuine interest. He remembered the loneliness in her empty apartment, the isolation she'd built around herself like armor. And he remembered Maya, who'd always told him that kindness was never wasted, that showing up for people mattered, that connection was worth the risk. He typed, "Coffee sounds good. How about Tuesday afternoon? I get off at 3. "Perfect. I'll find us a place." "Thank you, Ethan. Really, you're welcome. Good night, Victoria. Good night." Ethan set his phone down and looked at Maya's photo on the shelf. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," he said quietly. "I hope I'm not making a mistake." Maya smiled back at him from frozen memory, forever 31, forever trusting him to make good choices. Ethan finished his beer, turned off the lights, and went to bed. But sleep was a long time coming, and when it finally arrived, his dreams were full of coffee shops and honest conversations, and the terrifying, exhilarating possibility of connection. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray, persistent drizzle that made the city look washed out and tired. Ethan dropped Lily at kindergarten, endured her usual elaborate goodbye ritual, 3 hugs, 2 high fives, and a pinky promise that he'd remember to pick her up on time, then drove to Hale Industries with a knot of anxiety sitting heavy in his stomach. He hadn't seen Victoria since Saturday morning. They'd exchanged a few more texts over the weekend, brief, careful messages about Tuesday's coffee meeting, but nothing that addressed the fundamental strangeness of what was developing between them. His boss had cried in his kitchen. His boss had played princess castles with his daughter. His boss had asked to be his friend. The whole situation felt like standing on ice that might crack at any moment. Ethan parked in the employee garage, took the service elevator to the facilities office, and tried to convince himself that everything would be normal, that Victoria would go back to being the untouchable CEO, and he would go back to being invisible, and Friday night would fade into the category of strange things that happened once and were never mentioned again. He was reviewing the week's maintenance schedule when his supervisor, Derek, stuck his head into the office. Cole, you got a minute? Ethan looked up from his clipboard. Derek was 50-something, perpetually sunburned, and had been managing facilities at Hale Industries since before Ethan was born. He was fair, competent, and, most importantly, left Ethan alone to do his job. Sure, what's up? Just got a weird call from executive admin. Derek's expression was puzzled. They want you up on 40 for some kind of special project. Didn't give details, just said Ms. Hale requested you specifically. Ethan's stomach dropped. Ms. Hale requested me? That's what they said. I told them you were scheduled for HVAC maintenance in the south building all week, but they said to send someone else. This takes priority. Derek shrugged. No idea what it's about. Maybe she liked how you fixed that light in her office? Maybe, Ethan said weakly. Anyway, head up there when you're ready. They're expecting you. Derek disappeared back into the hallway, leaving Ethan staring at his maintenance schedule like it might offer answers. What was Victoria doing? They'd agreed to keep things professional at work. They'd agreed that whatever was developing between them existed outside these walls. So why was she summoning him to the executive floor where everyone would see, where people would ask questions, where the careful boundaries they'd established would crumble immediately? He considered texting her, demanding an explanation, but that felt like exactly the kind of panic response that would make this worse. Instead, Ethan took a breath, grabbed his tool belt more for the appearance of purpose than actual need, and took the elevator to the 40th floor. The executive level always made Ethan slightly uncomfortable. Everything was too clean, too quiet, too expensive. The carpet was thick enough to muffle footsteps. The art on the walls probably cost more than his car. The glass-walled offices and conference rooms created an illusion of transparency while actually revealing nothing at all. The executive assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who'd worked for Victoria for a decade, looked up as Ethan approached her desk. "Mr. Cole," she said with professional warmth, "thank you for coming up. Ms. Hale is expecting you." "What's this about?" Ethan asked carefully. "She'll explain. Go ahead in." Patricia gestured toward Victoria's office. The corner suite with views of the entire city, glass walls currently frosted for privacy. Ethan knocked once, heard Victoria's voice call out permission to enter, and stepped inside. Victoria sat behind her massive desk, looking every inch the CEO in a tailored gray suit and pulled back hair. Nothing about her suggested the woman who'd cried in his kitchen 2 days ago. Nothing except her eyes, which met his with something that might have been apology or determination or both. "Ethan, thank you for coming." Victoria stood, gesturing to the chairs across from her desk. "Please sit." "Ms. Hale, what's this about?" Ethan remained standing, keeping his voice low. "We agreed to keep things separate. Work is work. So why am I here?" "Because I need your help with something," Victoria said calmly. "And before you panic, it's completely legitimate and work-related. Sit down, please." Ethan sat, though every muscle in his body was tense. Victoria came around the desk, leaning against it rather than sitting. A deliberate choice to reduce the power differential, Ethan realized. When she spoke, her voice was measured and professional. "I've been thinking about our conversation on Saturday. About change. About figuring out what kind of leader I want to be, what kind of company I want to run." Victoria's hands gripped the edge of the desk. "And I realized something. I've been managing Hale Industries the same way for 15 years, focused entirely on efficiency, productivity, profit margins. And it's worked. We've grown, we're successful. But at what cost?" "I'm not sure what this has to do with me," Ethan said carefully. "I pulled the employee satisfaction surveys from the last 5 years. Really read them this time, not just the summary statistics." Victoria's expression was troubled. "The feedback is consistent across departments. People feel undervalued. They feel like numbers rather than human beings. Morale is terrible, turnover is high, and the company culture is described repeatedly as cold, transactional, and isolating." That's not uncommon in corporate environments," Ethan offered. "No, but it's unacceptable in mine, not anymore." Victoria pushed off the desk, began pacing. "I built this company. Every policy, every cultural norm, every priority. It all came from me. Which means if the culture is broken, I'm the one who broke it, and I need to fix it." "That's admirable." But again, what does this have to do with me? Victoria stopped pacing, turned to face him directly. I want to understand what it's actually like to work here, not the sanitized version I get in executive briefings or carefully managed town halls. The real experience, what people actually think, feel, struggle with every day. She took a breath. And I think the best way to do that is to spend time with employees at every level, starting with facilities. Ethan stared at her. You want to shadow me? For the next 2 weeks, yes. I want to understand what your job entails, what challenges you face, how the company's policies and culture impact your daily work. I want to see Hale Industries from your perspective. Ethan struggled to find words. That's a terrible idea. Why? Because I'm your employee, because people will talk, because... Ethan lowered his voice further. Because after Friday night and Saturday morning, the optics of you spending intensive one-on-one time with me are incredibly problematic. The optics are that the CEO is doing exactly what she should have done years ago, actually understanding how her company operates at every level. Victoria's voice was firm. I'm planning similar shadowing with other departments. Accounting, customer service, logistics. This isn't about you specifically, it's about genuine organizational change. Victoria, Ms. Hale, she corrected quietly. Here, I'm Ms. Hale. You were right about boundaries, so let's maintain them. At work, we're CEO and employee. Period. Ethan searched her face, looking for signs that this was some elaborate excuse to spend time together. But Victoria's expression was sincere, her posture professional. She genuinely seemed to believe this was about company improvement. What does HR say about this? Ethan asked. HR thinks it's an excellent initiative. Patricia is drafting the company-wide announcement now. I'll be spending 2 weeks each quarter doing similar shadowing programs with different departments. Victoria returned to her desk, pulled out a detailed schedule. I've blocked out my calendar, delegated urgent matters. This is happening, Ethan. The only question is whether you're willing to help me do it right. Ethan looked at the schedule. 2 weeks of Victoria shadowing him through every aspect of his job, from equipment maintenance to trash collection to the 1,000 small tasks that kept the building functional. It was comprehensive, thought through, legitimate. It was also going to be torture. All right, Ethan said finally, but we do this professionally. No personal conversations during work hours. No blurring lines. You want to understand my job? Fine, but that's all this is. Agreed. Victoria extended her hand across the desk. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Cole. Ethan shook her hand, feeling the formal absurdity of it after everything they'd shared. You're welcome, Ms. Hale. When do we start? If you're serious about understanding my job, we start now. I've got HVAC filters to change in the south building, and then the third-floor bathroom has a leak that's been reported 3 times. Victoria's lips twitched. Glamorous. You wanted reality. This is it. Then let's go. Victoria stood, grabbed a leather portfolio and her phone, then paused. Should I change? These shoes aren't exactly practical for maintenance work. Ethan looked at her expensive heels. You have anything else here? Running shoes in my gym bag and spare clothes. Then yes, change. We'll be doing a lot of walking and some crawling and possibly getting dirty. 10 minutes later, Victoria emerged from her private bathroom wearing jeans, a simple t-shirt, and sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Without the armor of her business suit, she looked younger, more approachable, and uncomfortably attractive in a way that Ethan firmly refused to acknowledge. Better? She asked. Much better. Come on. They took the service elevator down to the facilities office. Derek did a visible double-take when Victoria walked in behind Ethan. Ms. Hale, Derek stammered, straightening immediately. I didn't realize we weren't expecting... Is there a problem? No problem, Derek. Victoria offered him a professional smile. I'm shadowing Mr. Cole for the next 2 weeks as part of a company-wide initiative to better understand our operations at every level. You should receive a formal announcement from my office this afternoon. Derek glanced between Victoria and Ethan, clearly trying to process this information. Shadowing, you're going to do facilities work? Observe facilities work, Victoria clarified. Learn about it. Understand the challenges and successes of this department. Mr. Cole has agreed to show me the ropes. Right. Derek still looked bewildered. Okay then. Cole, you were heading to South Building HVAC? That's the plan. Then I guess Ms. Hale is going with you. Derek shook his head slightly, like he'd stumbled into an alternate reality. Let me know if you need anything. Ethan gathered his tools, filter replacements, basic repair kit, ladder, and led Victoria out to his work truck. It was the same battered Honda from Friday night, still scattered with Lily's toys, still smelling faintly of the French fries they'd had for dinner last week. Victoria climbed into the passenger seat without comment, moving a stuffed dinosaur to make room. Your chariot, Ethan said dryly. It has character. They drove across campus to the South Building in silence. Ethan was hyper-aware of Victoria's presence beside him, the way this felt uncomfortably similar to Friday night, except with completely different context. Professional, he reminded himself. This was professional. The South Building was primarily research labs and development spaces. Ethan parked in the loading area, grabbed his equipment, and led Victoria to the mechanical room in the basement. HVAC filters need changing every 6 months, Ethan explained as they descended the stairs. Seems simple, but if you miss the schedule, air quality degrades and equipment efficiency drops. People start getting sick more often. Energy costs spike. How many filters do we have across all buildings? Victoria asked, pulling out her phone to take notes. About 400. I maintain roughly half. The other guys split the rest. And you keep track of the schedule how? Spreadsheet. Color-coded by building and urgency. Works fine as long as nobody misses an entry. Has anyone ever missed an entry? Yes, 2 years ago. We had a minor outbreak of respiratory issues in East Building before we figured out the problem. Victoria's expression shifted, the first sign that she was actually processing this as more than abstract information. People got sick because of a missed maintenance task? People get sick because of lots of missed maintenance tasks, Ethan said, opening the mechanical room door. That's why this job matters. The mechanical room was all concrete floors, exposed pipes, and industrial equipment humming with constant white noise. Ethan showed Victoria the HVAC system, explained the filter placement, demonstrated the replacement process. She watched with genuine attention, asking intelligent questions, taking detailed notes. This looks straightforward, Victoria observed. Why does it require a full-time position? Because straightforward doesn't mean easy. There are 400 filters, multiple building systems, equipment that breaks at inconvenient times, emergency repairs that can't wait. Ethan replaced the last filter, climbed down from the ladder. I spend about 60% of my time on scheduled maintenance, 40% on emergency response. The percentages shift depending on the week. What constitutes an emergency? Burst pipes, electrical failures, HVAC breakdowns in summer, heating failures in winter, anything that makes the building unsafe or unusable. How often do emergencies happen? Often enough that I can't schedule my days with any certainty. I might plan to do filter changes, but if a pipe bursts, that takes priority. People can't work in flooded buildings. Victoria absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. So your job requires constant flexibility and responsiveness. Yes. And yet our company policy requires facilities staff to submit detailed daily schedules 48 hours in advance, with supervisor approval for any deviations. Ethan looked at her with surprise. You know about that policy? I approved it 5 years ago. It was supposed to improve departmental efficiency and accountability. Victoria's voice had gone flat. I'm guessing it doesn't work that way in practice. It means we spend hours doing administrative paperwork for schedules that become obsolete the moment something breaks. And we have to get approval for emergency responses, which is absurd when you're standing in a flooded hallway. That's ridiculous. It's policy, Ethan said carefully. Your policy. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring at the HVAC system like it might offer absolution. What else? She asked finally. What other policies make your job harder than it needs to be? You really want to know? I really want to know. So Ethan told her. As they moved through the rest of his morning tasks, fixing the third-floor bathroom leak, replacing burned-out lights in the parking garage, responding to a reported electrical smell in the cafeteria, he explained the accumulated frustrations of working under systems designed by people who'd never actually done the work. The supply ordering process that required 3 levels of approval and took weeks, forcing facilities staff to personally buy emergency supplies and wait months for reimbursement. The time-tracking software that didn't account for the reality of emergency response work. The lack of dedicated workspace for facilities staff, who had to use a converted storage room as an office. The fact that facilities employees were excluded from company-wide communications about building changes, meaning they often discovered major renovations only when confused contractors asked them for access. Victoria listened to all of it, her notes growing longer, her expression increasingly troubled. "I had no idea," she said, as they took a break for lunch. Sandwiches from the cafeteria, eaten sitting on a bench outside the main building. "I genuinely had no idea the systems were this dysfunctional." "They're not dysfunctional from an executive perspective," Ethan pointed out. "They probably make the numbers look good. Clear accountability, documented processes, cost controls. But they make the actual work nearly impossible." "Not impossible, just unnecessarily difficult." Victoria set down her sandwich, suddenly not hungry. "I did this. Every policy you've mentioned I either approved or created. I thought I was building efficiency. I was actually building dysfunction." "You were solving problems you could see from the 40th floor," Ethan said. "You couldn't see the problems we deal with down here. That's not malice. It's just distance. Distance I chose. Distance I maintained deliberately." Victoria's voice was bitter. "You know what the worst part is? I could have known. I could have asked. I could have spent one day, just one, actually understanding how this company operates below the executive level. But I didn't, because I assumed I knew better. I assumed if people had problems, they'd tell me." "Would you have listened if they did?" Victoria flinched. "Probably not. No, I would have dismissed it as whining or inefficiency. I would have told them to work within the system." "Then maybe this is progress," Ethan offered. "You're listening now. It shouldn't have taken 15 years and a personal crisis for me to start paying attention." They finished lunch in heavy silence. When they returned to work, an afternoon full of minor repairs and routine maintenance, Victoria was quieter than before, but her attention never wavered. She watched everything Ethan did with the focus of someone genuinely trying to understand rather than just going through motions. By 5 o'clock, Ethan was exhausted. Not from the physical work, that was routine, but from the constant awareness of Victoria's presence, the careful maintenance of professional boundaries, the weight of showing her the gap between executive intention and operational reality. "That's it for today," Ethan said as they returned to the facilities office. "Same time tomorrow?" "Same time." Victoria hesitated. "Thank you for being honest with me. I know that wasn't easy. It's your company. You should know how it actually works. Still, I appreciate it." Victoria started to leave, then turned back. "We're still on for coffee tomorrow afternoon? After work?" Ethan glanced around, making sure they were alone. "Yes, 3 o'clock at that place you mentioned, the one on Market Street. I'll see you there." Victoria's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something warmer underneath. "And Ethan, today was illuminating in ways I needed." "Good. That's good." Victoria left and Ethan spent the next hour finishing paperwork and preparing for Tuesday's tasks. When he finally made it home, Lily was waiting with Mrs. Chen, bouncing with barely contained energy. "Daddy, Mrs. Chen taught me how to make paper flowers." "That's wonderful, Bug." Ethan thanked Mrs. Chen, settled up for the babysitting, and closed the door on the outside world. Lily chattered through dinner, stories about kindergarten drama, questions about everything and nothing, easy companionship that required nothing from Ethan except presence. After bath and bedtime story, after Lily finally fell asleep clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, Ethan sat on the couch and allowed himself to actually think about the day. Victoria had been serious about change. Not performative, not superficial. She genuinely listened, genuinely cared about the dysfunction she'd uncovered. And watching her grapple with the gap between intention and impact, seeing her confront the consequences of her leadership choices, it had been uncomfortably intimate in ways that had nothing to do with physical attraction and everything to do with witnessing someone's honest reckoning with themselves. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "I can't stop thinking about what you said today. About all of it. I created systems that make good people's jobs harder. How do I fix that? Ethan typed back. One policy at a time. Start with the most broken things. Ask the people doing the work what they need. Actually listen to the answers. That simple? That simple. Not easy, but simple. Will you help me? Not just with facilities, but thinking through how to approach this across the company. You understand how to see people. I need that perspective. Ethan stared at the message. This was exactly the kind of blurred boundary he'd said they couldn't cross. This was work bleeding into personal, professional, becoming intimate. But it was also Victoria asking for help, becoming a better leader, a better person. And Ethan had told her that change started with honesty and vulnerability. Refusing to help now felt like punishing her for trying. I'll help however I can, he typed. But we need to be careful about optics, about boundaries. I know. I'll be careful, I promise. Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow's another long day. You too. And Ethan, thank you for everything. Ethan set down his phone and looked at Maya's photo. I think I'm in over my head, he told her quietly. I think this is getting complicated in ways I didn't anticipate. Maya smiled back, offering no advice, no judgment. Just the memory of a woman who'd believed in second chances, who'd always told Ethan that people were worth the risk. Tuesday morning began the same way Monday had. Ethan showing Victoria the unglamorous reality of facilities work. They replaced a broken water heater, repaired a malfunctioning door lock, dealt with a small flood in the basement caused by a cleaning crew's error. Victoria took notes, asked questions, and visibly struggled with each new example of how company policies created problems rather than solving them. At 2:30, Ethan called it for the day. They both needed to clean up before meeting for coffee, and he needed time to pick up Lily from kindergarten and drop her with Mrs. Chen. I'll see you at 3, Victoria said as she headed toward the executive washroom. See you there. The coffee shop Victoria had chosen was a small, independent place in a neighborhood far from Hale Industries. The kind of spot where nobody would recognize either of them, where they could just be two people having a conversation. Ethan arrived first, ordered a black coffee, and claimed a corner table away from the windows. Victoria arrived exactly at 3, wearing the same jeans and t-shirt from earlier, her hair still pulled back. She looked tired and unsettled and more human than Ethan had ever seen her at work. She ordered some complicated latte and joined him at the table. Hi, she said. Hi. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. At work they'd had clear roles, defined purpose. Here, stripped of professional context, they were just two people trying to figure out what they were to each other. This is strange, Victoria said finally. Very strange. I don't know how to do this. Personal relationships, friendship. I'm realizing I never really learned. You're doing fine, Ethan assured her. There's no script. You just talk. Be honest. See what happens. Victoria wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Okay, honest. I'm terrified that I've spent 15 years building a company that hurts people, that all my success came at the cost of other people's well-being, and I don't know how to live with that. Then change it, Ethan said simply. You have the power. Use it. It's not that simple. These systems are embedded. Changing them means admitting I was wrong. It means taking responsibility for damage I didn't intend but absolutely caused. Yes, it does. Victoria met his eyes. You don't pull punches, do you? You asked for honesty. This is what it looks like. Fair enough. Victoria took a sip of her latte. Can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. After Maya died, when you were dealing with all that grief and anger and having to rebuild your life, did you ever want to just give up, stop trying, let everything fall apart? Ethan was quiet for a moment, memories he usually kept locked away surfacing despite his best efforts. Every day, he admitted finally. For the first 6 months, every single day, I'd wake up and think, I can't do this, I can't keep going, it's too hard. What stopped you? Lily. Ethan's voice went soft. She needed me, and I couldn't let her lose both parents. So I got up, I made breakfast, I went to work, I came home. I kept moving forward even when every step felt impossible. Not because I was strong or brave, but because giving up wasn't an option when someone depended on me. That's exactly what I mean, though. You had someone to live for, someone to keep you grounded. Victoria's expression was raw with longing. I don't have that. I don't have anyone who needs me. Anyone I'd be letting down if I just stopped trying. You have employees who depend on you, Ethan pointed out. Hundreds of people whose livelihoods are connected to your leadership. That's not the same. That's professional obligation. I'm talking about personal connection, about someone who sees you as more than a role or function. Then build that, Ethan said. It's not too late. You're 42, not 82. You have time. Victoria laughed, bitter and sad. I don't know how. I've forgotten how to connect with people, how to let them in, how to be vulnerable without it feeling like weakness. Start small. Start with one person. Build from there. Is that an offer? Victoria asked quietly. Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. This was the moment where everything could tip from professional mentorship into something else entirely. He could see it in Victoria's eyes, hope and fear tangled together, the desperate wish for connection warring with terror of rejection. Yes, he heard himself say, I'll be your friend, if you want that. I want that very much. They sat with that declaration for a moment, letting it settle. Then Victoria smiled, tentative and genuine. So, friends, what do friends talk about? Normal things, life, interests, random thoughts, whatever comes up. I don't know if I have any interests beyond work, Victoria admitted. That sounds pathetic, doesn't it? It sounds like you've been focused on survival for a long time, Ethan said gently. But survival isn't the same as living. Maybe it's time to figure out what living actually looks like for you. How do I do that? Try things. Say yes to experiences that scare you a little. Notice what makes you curious. Pay attention to moments when you feel genuinely engaged rather than just going through motions. Victoria pulled out her phone, typed something. I'm making a list, things to try, to figure out who I am outside of work. Good. What's on it so far? Museums. I used to love art but haven't been to a gallery in a decade. Cooking. I live on takeout and restaurant meals. Reading fiction instead of business books. She paused. Making actual friends who aren't networking contacts. That's a solid start. They talked for another hour, easy conversation that flowed more naturally than Ethan expected. Victoria asked about Lily, listened to stories about kindergarten drama with genuine interest. Ethan asked about Victoria's childhood, learned that she'd grown up poor, put herself through college, built Hale Industries from nothing through sheer determination and 16-hour workdays. I was so angry, Victoria said, at my father for leaving, at my mother for giving up, at the world for being unfair. And I channeled all that anger into success, into proving I could survive on my own, that I didn't need anyone. And now? Now I realize that surviving alone isn't actually winning. It's just alone. When they finally left the coffee shop, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Ethan walked Victoria to her car, a sleek sedan that probably cost more than he made in 2 years. Thank you, Victoria said, for this, for being patient with me while I figure out how to be a person again. You don't have to thank me for basic friendship. Maybe not, but I want to anyway. Victoria hesitated, then added quietly, I meant what I said Saturday. You're the only person who's ever seen me at my worst and didn't judge me for it. That means more than I know how to express. Everyone deserves that kind of acceptance, Ethan said. Everyone. Victoria nodded, got in her car, and drove away. Ethan stood in the parking lot for a moment, watching her taillights disappear, trying to identify the feeling expanding in his chest. It felt dangerously close to hope, and that terrified him more than anything else. The next 2 weeks unfolded in a rhythm that felt both natural and impossible. During work hours, Ethan and Victoria maintained careful professionalism. She shadowed him through facilities tasks, asked thoughtful questions, documented every broken system and unnecessary obstacle. After work, a few times a week, they met for coffee or walked through the park near Lily's school, conversations ranging from Victoria's ongoing self-discovery to Ethan's memories of Maya to debates about whether dinosaurs or unicorns would win in a fight, a question Lily had posed that somehow became their running joke. Victoria was changing. Ethan could see it in small ways that accumulated into something significant. She started greeting facilities staff by name, asking about their families, actually listening to their answers. She implemented immediate fixes for the most egregious policy problems, streamlined the supply ordering process, eliminated the redundant scheduling requirements, designated actual office space for facilities instead of the converted storage room. The changes weren't revolutionary, but they were real, and people noticed. But the company noticed something else too. Whispers started circulating about Victoria's sudden interest in the facility's manager. Jennifer from HR pulled Ethan aside one afternoon with carefully worded concerns about appearance and professionalism. Derek made increasingly awkward jokes about Ethan being the CEO's favorite. And on the executive floor, according to Victoria, certain board members were questioning whether her shadowing program was genuine organizational improvement or personal distraction. "They think I'm having a breakdown," Victoria told Ethan during one of their coffee meetings, her voice tight with frustration. "Patrick Chen actually asked if I needed mental health leave, because apparently wanting to understand my own company is evidence of instability." "Are they wrong?" Ethan asked gently. "You did have a breakdown. That's what started all this." Victoria flinched. "I know, but I'm trying to turn that breakdown into something productive, into actual change. And they're treating it like some midlife crisis that I'll get over if they just wait long enough." "Maybe you need to show them results, concrete improvements that justify the time investment." "I am showing them results. Employee satisfaction scores are already ticking upward in facilities. Maintenance response times have improved. People are actually talking to me instead of hiding when I walk by." "Then let the results speak for themselves," Ethan said. "Stop worrying about what the board thinks and focus on what you know is right." Victoria managed a small smile. "When did you become so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just started paying attention." It was a Thursday afternoon in the third week when everything shifted. Ethan was replacing a broken sink in the second-floor break room when his phone rang. Mrs. Chen's name flashed on the screen, and Ethan's stomach immediately dropped. Mrs. Chen never called during work hours unless something was wrong. "Mrs. Chen?" "Ethan, I'm so sorry to bother you." Her voice was strained. "But I'm at the emergency room with my husband. He had chest pains. They're running tests. I can't pick up Lily today." Ethan was already packing up his tools. "Is your husband okay?" "I don't know yet. They think it might be his heart." "I'm so sorry. I know this is terrible timing. Don't apologize. Family comes first. I'll get Lily. You focus on your husband and let me know if you need anything." "Thank you. I'm so sorry." Ethan hung up and checked the time. 2:45. Kindergarten let out at 3, and it was a 20-minute drive across town. He could make it, but barely. He found Victoria in the facilities office reviewing supply requisitions with Derek. "I have to leave early," Ethan said. "Family emergency. My babysitter's husband is in the hospital, and I need to pick up Lily." Victoria immediately stood. "Is everything okay?" "I don't know yet, but I need to go." "Of course, go. Take whatever time you need." Ethan grabbed his keys and was halfway to the parking garage when Victoria caught up with him, slightly out of breath. "Wait," she said. "Let me come with you." Ethan stopped. "What?" "You're stressed. You shouldn't be driving across town like this. Let me drive you, or better yet, let me pick up Lily while you go check on Mrs. Chen's husband." "Victoria, you don't need to—" "I know I don't need to, but I want to help, please. Let me do something useful." Ethan looked at her, saw genuine concern rather than obligation, and made a split-second decision. "Okay, but we need to leave now." They took Victoria's car because it was closer. Ethan navigated while Victoria drove with surprising competence through rush-hour traffic, her expensive sedan weaving through lanes with the efficiency of someone who knew the city well. "Tell me about Mrs. Chen," Victoria said as they merged onto the highway. "She's 72, lives next door to us. Started watching Lily after Maya died because she said her own grandchildren lived too far away and she missed having a little one around." Ethan's hands gripped his knees. "Her husband is older, 78. They've been married 53 years. And she's been your primary childcare all this time?" "Yes. She's family. Not by blood, but by choice. She's been there for every emergency, every late night, every time I couldn't be two places at once." Victoria was quiet for a moment. You're lucky to have that kind of support. I know. That's why this is terrifying. If something happens to Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen will be devastated, and I'll need to figure out how to help her while also finding new childcare arrangements. And Ethan stopped himself. Sorry, I'm spiraling. You're worried about people you love. That's not spiraling, that's being human. They made it to Lily's school with 2 minutes to spare. Ethan jumped out before Victoria had fully stopped, ran to the pickup area, and found Lily waiting with her teacher, looking small and uncertain in a way that made his chest ache. Daddy! She launched herself at him. You're late. I was worried. I know, Bug. I'm sorry. Mrs. Chen couldn't come today, so I had to pick you up myself. Is Mrs. Chen okay? Her husband is sick. They're at the hospital. Ethan scooped Lily up. But she's going to be fine. Come on. I have someone I want you to meet. Well, meet again. He carried Lily back to Victoria's car. When Lily saw who was driving, her face lit up with recognition. Victoria, from the Princess Castle. Victoria smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine. Hi, Lily. Your dad needed a ride, so I'm helping out. That's very nice of you. Lily settled into the back seat with Ethan's help, looking around the car's pristine interior with wide eyes. Your car is really clean. Daddy's car has French fries under the seats. I heard about those French fries, Victoria said, meeting Lily's eyes in the rearview mirror. They sound legendary, Lily giggled. They're kind of gross now. They drove to the hospital where Mrs. Chen's husband had been admitted. Ethan left Lily with Victoria in the waiting room, a decision that would have seemed insane 2 weeks ago but somehow made perfect sense now, and went to find Mrs. Chen. She was in a private waiting area, her face drawn with worry, tissues clutched in her hands. When she saw Ethan, she stood. You didn't have to come, she said, but her relief was obvious. Of course I came. How is he? They're running more tests. They think it was a minor heart attack. They're talking about surgery. Her voice cracked. 53 years. We've been married 53 years. I don't know how to be in the world without him. Ethan pulled Mrs. Chen into a hug, letting her cry against his shoulder the way she'd let him cry on hers countless times over the past 3 years. They stayed like that for several minutes, two people who'd learned that sometimes presence was the only comfort that mattered. He's strong, Ethan said finally, and he's stubborn. He'll get through this. I hope you're right. Can I do anything? Do you need anything? Mrs. Chen pulled back, wiped her eyes. Just take care of Lily tonight. I need to stay here with him. Tomorrow I'll know more about the surgery schedule and recovery. Don't worry about Lily, or about anything else. You focus on your husband. I've got everything else handled. Mrs. Chen squeezed his hands. You're a good man, Ethan Cole. Maya chose well. Yeah. The words hit harder than expected. Ethan just nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in his throat. When he returned to the waiting room, he found Victoria and Lily sitting together on one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs. Lily was showing Victoria something on her hands, elaborate drawings in marker that her teacher must have done. And this one is a butterfly, Lily was explaining seriously, because I was very good at circle time today. You must have been exceptionally good, Victoria said with matching seriousness. That's a very detailed butterfly. I was the best. I didn't wiggle even once. Lily looked up and saw Ethan. Daddy, is Mr. Chen going to be okay? The doctors are taking good care of him, Ethan said, which wasn't quite an answer but was all he could offer. We're going to let Mrs. Chen stay with him tonight. Is that okay? Okay. Can Victoria come have dinner with us? Ethan looked at Victoria, giving her an easy out. Victoria probably has plans. I don't, actually, Victoria interrupted, and I'd love to have dinner with you both, if that's all right. So they went back to Ethan's apartment, the three of them. Lily chattered the entire drive about kindergarten and butterflies and a complicated game involving sharks that Ethan couldn't quite follow. Victoria listened with the focused attention that Ethan was learning was her natural state. Fully present, genuinely engaged, treating Lily's 5-year-old logic with the same respect she'd give a board presentation. At the apartment, Ethan started pulling together ingredients for pasta, while Lily gave Victoria a comprehensive tour of every room, pointing out important features like the place where Daddy kept the good cookies and the bathroom where the sink sometimes made funny noises. This is my room, Lily announced, pushing open her door with pride. Daddy painted it purple because that's my favorite color, and those are my stars on the ceiling. They glow at night. It's beautiful, Victoria said, and meant it. Your dad did a wonderful job. He's really good at making things nice. He says that's his job, making sure everything works right so people can be happy. Victoria glanced at Ethan, who was stirring pasta sauce in the kitchen, and something in her expression shifted, like she was seeing him differently, or maybe seeing him clearly for the first time. Dinner was chaotic in the way meals with 5-year-olds always were. Lily insisted on demonstrating proper spaghetti twirling technique, got sauce on her face despite Ethan's best efforts, and told Victoria approximately 17 stories about various kindergarten dramas. Victoria navigated it all with surprising grace, asking questions, laughing at Lily's jokes, helping clean up spills without making a big deal about it. After dinner, Lily wanted to show Victoria her favorite movie. Ethan tried to intervene. Victoria had already given up her entire evening. She didn't need to sit through an animated film about talking animals. But Victoria insisted she was curious. They ended up on the couch, Lily nestled between them, the movie playing on Ethan's ancient television. Halfway through, Lily fell asleep, her head on Victoria's lap, her small body completely relaxed in the unconscious trust of children. Victoria looked down at the sleeping child, her expression unreadable. I've never done this before, she said quietly. Watched a kids' movie? Any of it. Dinner with a family. Sitting on a couch with a child asleep on my lap. Just being part of normal domestic life. Victoria's hand rested carefully on Lily's back. I didn't realize what I was missing. I didn't know it could feel like this. Like what? Like coming home. Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. Like mattering to someone in a way that has nothing to do with what you can do for them professionally. Ethan carefully lifted Lily, carried her to her bedroom, tucked her in with practiced efficiency. When he returned to the living room, Victoria was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. Thank you, Ethan said, for today, for helping with Lily, for being here. I should be thanking you for letting me into this, into your life. Victoria turned to face him. I know this is complicated. I know we're crossing lines that probably shouldn't be crossed. But I need you to know that today, watching you with Lily, seeing how you showed up for Mrs. Chen, being part of your world even briefly, it's shown me what I want my life to look like, what actually matters. Victoria, I'm not asking for anything, she interrupted quickly. I'm not expecting anything. I just need to say this before I lose my nerve. You've given me something I didn't know I was missing. A glimpse of what it means to build a life around love instead of achievement. And even if nothing ever comes of this, even if we stay just friends forever, I'm grateful. More grateful than I know how to express. Ethan crossed the space between them, stood close enough to see the vulnerability in her eyes, the fear and hope tangled together. I'm scared, he admitted, of getting close to someone again, of opening up my life and Lily's life to someone who might leave, of risking my heart when I barely survived losing it the first time. I know. I'm scared too. But I'm also tired of being scared, tired of living in survival mode, tired of protecting myself so carefully that I don't actually live at all. Ethan took a breath. You asked me once how I do it, how I stay kind after everything. The answer is that I choose it, every day, because the alternative is becoming hard and closed off and alone. And I refuse to let grief turn me into someone my daughter can't recognize. You're remarkable, Victoria said softly. I'm just trying, same as you. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with everything they weren't quite saying. Then Victoria stepped back, creating safe distance. I should go. It's late, and you have work tomorrow. We both do. Victoria gathered her things, moved toward the door. Ethan walked her out, hyper-aware of how domestic this felt. Seeing her off after dinner, after an evening spent together, after she'd been part of his family in ways that felt both natural and impossible. At the door, Victoria paused. Ethan, can I ask you something? Of course. If I weren't your boss, if we were just two people who met under normal circumstances, would you want this? Whatever this is becoming. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. This was the question that changed everything, the one that required honesty even when honesty was terrifying. Yes, he said simply. I would. Victoria's breath caught. Even though I'm a mess? Even though I'm still figuring out how to be a person? Especially because of that. Because you're trying. Because you're brave enough to admit you don't have all the answers. Because you looked at your life and decided to change it instead of just accepting that this was as good as it gets. We can't, though, Victoria said, and it sounded like grief. I'm your boss. You work for me. The power dynamic makes anything between us inherently problematic. I know. And Lily has to be your priority. She deserves stability, not complications. I know that too. So where does that leave us? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. But I know I don't want to lose you, even as just a friend, even if that's all we can ever be. You've become important to me, Victoria. Important to both of us. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're important to me too, more than I thought possible after knowing someone for such a short time. Then we figure it out, one day at a time. We maintain boundaries at work, we're careful about how things look, and we see what develops. That's not much of a plan. No, but it's honest. Victoria laughed, the sound wet and broken. You're killing me with honesty. Better than the alternative. She reached out then, squeezed his hand once, a gesture that managed to be both intimate and completely chaste. Then she left, and Ethan stood in his doorway watching her disappear down the stairs, feeling like something fundamental had just shifted in his carefully controlled life. He checked on Lily, still sleeping soundly, her small face peaceful, then went to his own room. Maya's photo watched him from the nightstand. I think I'm falling for her, Ethan said quietly to his wife's frozen smile. I didn't mean to. I wasn't looking for this. But it's happening anyway, and I don't know what to do about it. Maya offered no answers, no guidance. Just the memory of a woman who'd believed in love, who told Ethan that closing his heart after loss would be the real tragedy. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Thank you for tonight, for letting me be part of your family, even temporarily. It meant more than you know. Ethan typed back. Thank you for being there, for helping with Lily, for caring about Mrs. Chen. You're becoming someone I count on. That's terrifying, for both of us. I don't want to mess this up, whatever this is, then we'll be careful. We'll communicate. We'll be honest even when it's hard. Okay, I can do that. Good. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we're tackling the North Building's plumbing issues, and it's going to be a long day. Looking forward to it. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Victoria. Ethan set down his phone and lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The smart thing would be to create distance, to reestablish professional boundaries, to protect himself and Lily from the potential fallout of getting involved with his boss. The smart thing would be to recognize that this was complicated and messy and potentially disastrous. But Ethan was tired of always choosing the smart thing, tired of letting fear make his decisions, tired of surviving instead of living. So instead, he let himself imagine what it might be like if Victoria weren't his boss, if they were just two people who'd found each other at the right time, both healing from different kinds of wounds, both trying to figure out who they wanted to be. He imagined more evenings like tonight, dinners and movies and Lily falling asleep between them. He imagined Victoria becoming a permanent part of their lives, instead of just a temporary presence. He imagined opening his heart again after 3 years of keeping it safely locked away. The images terrified him, but they also filled him with something he'd almost forgotten. Hope for a future that looked different from the past, possibilities stretching out beyond just survival and responsibility. Ethan closed his eyes and let himself want it, just for tonight, just in the privacy of his own heart. He let himself imagine a future where loving someone again didn't mean betraying Maya's memory, but honoring it. Where taking a risk on connection was bravery instead of foolishness. Where two broken people could maybe, possibly, help each other become whole. Tomorrow, he would worry about logistics and complications, and all the very real obstacles standing between them. Tomorrow, he would be sensible and careful and professionally appropriate. But tonight, alone in the dark with possibility whispering in his chest, Ethan Cole let himself hope. And that felt like the first truly brave thing he'd done since the night Maya died. Across the city, in her pristine apartment that felt slightly less empty than it had 3 weeks ago, Victoria Hale was doing exactly the same thing. The crisis came on a Monday morning, 6 weeks after that night at Ethan's apartment. Victoria was in the middle of a board meeting when her assistant Patricia knocked urgently on the frosted glass door, her face pale with something between concern and poorly concealed excitement. Victoria excused herself from the presentation on quarterly projections and stepped into the hallway. Patricia handed her a tablet displaying an anonymous email that had been sent to every member of the board, the executive team, and half the company's senior management. The subject line read, "CEO's inappropriate relationship with subordinate employee." Victoria's stomach turned to ice as she read. The email detailed her shadowing program with Ethan, but framed it as a prolonged affair disguised as professional development. It included carefully selected observations. Victoria leaving work early to drive Ethan somewhere, the two of them having coffee together multiple times a week, Victoria spending an entire evening at Ethan's apartment. The facts were accurate. The context was completely distorted, and the implication was unmistakable. The CEO was abusing her power to pursue a romantic relationship with a facilities worker. "Who sent this?" Victoria demanded, her voice tight. "It's anonymous, routed through multiple servers. It is trying to trace it, but they're not optimistic." Patricia's professionalism cracked slightly. "Ms. Hale, is any of this true?" "The facts are accurate. The interpretation is not." Victoria's mind raced. "Where's Ethan now?" "Facilities office, I assume. It's not even 8 yet." "Get him up here. Now. Private conference room. Not my office." Victoria's hands were shaking. She forced them still. "And get legal and HR in here immediately." The next 2 hours were brutal. Legal advised immediate suspension for both Victoria and Ethan pending a full investigation. HR recommended Victoria recuse herself from all decisions involving Ethan and consider voluntary leave. The board members who'd already read the email were calling, demanding explanations, questioning Victoria's judgment and fitness for leadership. Ethan arrived 30 minutes after being summoned, still in his work clothes, his face carefully blank in the way Victoria had learned meant he was terrified but refusing to show it. They were kept in separate conference rooms, questioned separately, treated like suspects instead of colleagues. Victoria told the truth. All of it. The holiday party, driving Ethan home drunk, showing up at his apartment, the shadowing program, the coffee meetings, the evening with Lily. She explained her intentions, genuine organizational change, personal growth, a friendship that had developed organically from mutual respect. She acknowledged the optics were problematic but insisted nothing inappropriate had occurred. "But you have feelings for him," the head of HR said. It wasn't a question. Victoria looked at the 3 people sitting across from her, HR, legal, and a board member who'd never particularly liked her. She could lie, deny everything except professional admiration, protect herself and Ethan from the worst of the fallout. But she'd promised Ethan honesty, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. "Yes," Victoria said quietly. "I have feelings for him, but I haven't acted on them. We've maintained appropriate boundaries. There's been no abuse of power, no coercion, no relationship beyond friendship. The appearance of impropriety is often as damaging as actual impropriety," the board member said coldly. "You put yourself and this company in an untenable position. I tried to help my company by understanding how it actually operates. I tried to become a better leader. And yes, in the process, I became friends with someone who happens to work for me. That's not a crime." "It's a liability," legal countered. "If Mr. Cole were to claim coercion or harassment, this company would be exposed to significant legal risk. The power differential makes consent inherently questionable." "Ethan would never," Victoria started, then stopped. Because of course that wasn't the point. The point was that it could happen. That from a legal perspective, the risk existed regardless of actual intentions. They suspended her, effective immediately, pending the outcome of a full investigation. Victoria was to have no contact with Ethan, no involvement in company operations, no access to her office. She was escorted to collect her personal belongings like a criminal, walked out of the building by security while employees watched with undisguised shock. Her phone rang before she'd even made it to her car. The board chair demanding her immediate resignation. "This company cannot afford the scandal," he said bluntly. "Your judgment has been catastrophically compromised." Step down now with some dignity and tact, or we'll force you out and it will be much uglier. I built this company, Victoria said, her voice shaking with rage and grief. I gave it everything, 20 years of my life. And you've tarnished it with one spectacularly poor decision. Resign, Victoria. It's over. She hung up on him, got in her car, and drove. Not home. Not anywhere specific. Just drove through the city while her entire life imploded around her, while everything she'd built crumbled because she dared to be human, dared to want connection, dared to care about someone. Her phone kept ringing. Board members, lawyers, Patricia. She ignored all of them until she saw Ethan's name flash across the screen. Then she pulled over in a random parking lot and answered. Are you okay? Ethan's voice was strained. No. Are you? No. A pause. They fired me. Victoria's world tilted. What? Not officially. They said it was a mutual separation to avoid legal complications. Offered me 6 months severance if I signed an NDA and agreed not to pursue legal action. Ethan's voice was eerily calm. I didn't sign yet. Told them I needed to talk to a lawyer, but it's pretty clear. Either I take the deal and walk away quietly, or they make this into a public mess that destroys both our reputations. This is my fault, Victoria whispered. I brought you into this. I crossed boundaries. I should have been more careful. Victoria, stop. This isn't your fault. We didn't do anything wrong. Except develop feelings for each other despite a massive power differential that makes anything between us inherently problematic. Victoria's laugh was bitter. They're asking me to resign, and they're right. I compromised my judgment. I put the company at risk. I put you at risk. What are you going to do? Victoria looked out at the gray sky, the anonymous parking lot, the ordinary city that kept moving while her world fell apart. She thought about the company she'd built, the life she'd constructed, the person she'd been before a drunk holiday party changed everything. And she thought about who she wanted to be now. I'm going to fight, she said, not for the company, not for my reputation, but for the right to make my own choices about who I care about, for the principle that caring about someone shouldn't be grounds for destruction. That's going to get messy. I know. You could lose everything. I know that too. Victoria's voice steadied. But I'm tired of living in fear. Tired of letting other people's judgment control my decisions. You taught me that. You and Lily. You taught me that love and connection are worth fighting for. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. What do you need from me? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. Victoria pressed her forehead against the steering wheel. I need to figure out what I'm actually fighting for. Whether this is about us or about something bigger. It's about both, Ethan said. It's about your right to be human, to have a personal life, to care about people without it being characterized as abuse of power. But it is a power imbalance. They're not wrong about that. Then I quit, Ethan said simply. If that's the obstacle, I remove it. I don't work for you anymore anyway. They already fired me. So the power differential is gone. We're just two people now. Ethan, I love you, he interrupted, and the words landed like an earthquake. I didn't mean to. I tried not to, but I do. I love the way you show up even when you're terrified. I love how you listen to Lily like she's the most important person in the world. I love that you're brave enough to admit when you're wrong and strong enough to change. And I'm not going to pretend I don't feel that just because it's complicated. Victoria couldn't breathe. You can't say that. You can't. We agreed. We agreed to be careful. We agreed to maintain boundaries, and we did. But those boundaries are gone now. The company destroyed them. So I'm being honest. I love you. And if you feel the same way, then we fight for that. If you don't, tell me now and I'll walk away. But don't ask me to pretend this doesn't matter. Tears were streaming down Victoria's face. I'm 42 years old and I've never been in love. Not real love. Not the kind that makes you want to be better, braver, more honest. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what you need. I don't need you to be anything except yourself, Ethan said gently. That's the whole point. I fell in love with you, not some perfect version of you. The messy, scared, trying to figure it out you. That's who I want. What about Lily? She's your priority. She has to be. She is. Always. And you know what she said this morning when I told her I wasn't working at the office anymore? What? She asked if that meant Victoria could come over more often, because she likes you. Because in her 5-year-old logic, if we're not boss and employee anymore, we can just be friends who see each other whenever we want. Victoria laughed through her tears. She's smarter than both of us. She really is. They sat in silence for a moment, connected by phone across the city, both of them standing at the edge of something that could either save them or destroy them completely. I need to resign, Victoria said finally. Not because they're demanding it, but because it's the right thing to do. I can't lead a company effectively while fighting accusations of misconduct. And honestly, I don't want to anymore. These past weeks with you showed me what actually matters, and it's not quarterly reports or market share. What is it? Connection, love, building a life instead of just a career. Victoria's voice was stronger now. I have money saved. I can take time to figure out what I actually want to do with my life. Maybe start something new. Maybe consult. Maybe just breathe for a while and remember who I am outside of being CEO. That sounds terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying, but also liberating. When did you get so brave? When I met someone who showed me what bravery actually looks like. Victoria started her car. I'm coming over. Is that okay? I need to see you. We're not supposed to have contact during the investigation. I'm resigning. There won't be an investigation. I'm done playing by their rules. She drove to Ethan's apartment building, took the stairs 2 at a time, knocked on his door with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. When he opened it, still in his work clothes, looking exhausted and worried and impossibly dear, Victoria didn't think. She just stepped into his space and wrapped her arms around him. Ethan held her like she was something precious, his face buried in her hair, his heartbeat steady against her ear. They stood like that for a long time, just breathing, just being, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their carefully constructed lives. I don't know what happens next, Victoria said into his shoulder. Neither do I. I'm probably going to mess this up. I don't have a good track record with relationships. That makes 2 of us. I haven't dated anyone since Maya died. I have no idea how to do this. So we'll figure it out together. Victoria pulled back enough to see his face. One day at a time. One honest conversation at a time. One mistake, an apology, and try again at a time. That sounds like a terrible plan, Ethan said, but he was smiling. It's the only plan I have. Then I guess we're doing this. I guess we are. Ethan kissed her then, gentle and careful and full of promise. It felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. It felt like the start of something that might actually save them both. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. I need to tell you something, she said. Before this goes any further, I'm going to resign today. I'm going to issue a statement explaining my decision, taking full responsibility for poor judgment, but also standing firm that nothing inappropriate occurred. And then I'm going to spend the next few months figuring out who I am and what I want my life to look like. Okay? And I want you in it, you and Lily. Not as some grand romance where we rush into things and pretend we have it all figured out, but as partners, as people building something together, slowly, carefully, honestly. I want that too, Ethan said. More than I knew it was possible to want anything. What about Lily? We need to be careful about how we introduce this to her. She's already lost one parent. I don't want her to get attached to me if there's a chance this won't work. Lily already loves you. She has since the Princess Castle. Ethan's smile was soft. But you're right. We take it slow with her. We make sure she feels secure. We don't make promises we can't keep. I can do that. They spent the rest of the morning talking through logistics. Victoria called her lawyer, drafted her resignation letter, prepared a brief statement for the press. Ethan reviewed the severance agreement, consulted with his own lawyer, negotiated slightly better terms. By noon, both of them had officially severed ties with Hale Industries. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at nothing but empty air and possibility. That afternoon, Victoria posted her resignation announcement. The media picked it up immediately. Speculation ran wild about the mysterious relationship that had brought down a CEO. But Victoria refused to comment beyond her official statement. She told the truth. She'd taken responsibility for her choices. What other people made of it was their business. The response from the business community was mixed. Some praised her integrity in resigning. Others condemned her lack of professionalism. A few female executives reached out privately with messages of support, sharing their own stories of impossible choices between personal happiness and professional survival. Mrs. Chen's husband recovered from his surgery. She returned to watching Lily, but with reduced hours. She needed time to care for her husband during his rehabilitation. Victoria, suddenly unemployed with nothing but time, offered to help with childcare. At first, it was just an afternoon here and there, then a few mornings a week, then a regular schedule that felt natural and right. Lily took to the new arrangement with the easy adaptability of children. To her, Victoria was just Daddy's friend, who came over a lot, who helped with homework and made pretty good pancakes and was learning how to do proper princess voices. Simple, uncomplicated, exactly what it needed to be. 3 months after the resignation, Victoria started a consulting firm focused on organizational culture and leadership development. Her first client was a mid-sized tech company whose CEO had heard about Victoria's transformation and wanted help making her company more humane. Then another client, then another. Word spread that Victoria Hale had done the unthinkable. She'd walked away from power to pursue authenticity, and somehow it had made her more compelling, not less. Ethan found work at a smaller company, managing facilities for a nonprofit focused on affordable housing. The pay was less, but the mission mattered, and his new boss actually listened when Ethan suggested improvements to their systems. He came home energized instead of drained, proud of the work he was doing. 6 months after that terrible Monday morning, Victoria and Ethan took Lily to the aquarium. It was a Saturday, bright and clear, and Lily raced from exhibit to exhibit with boundless enthusiasm, while the two adults followed at a more sedate pace. "Look at the jellyfish," Lily pressed her face against the glass. "They're so pretty. Can we get one as a pet?" "Jellyfish need special tanks," Ethan explained, "and they're kind of dangerous. They sting." "Oh, then maybe just a goldfish." Victoria watched Lily with an expression Ethan had learned to recognize. Wonder, mixed with disbelief that this was actually her life now. That she got to be part of this family, part of these ordinary, extraordinary moments. "You okay?" Ethan asked quietly. "Yeah, just thinking about how different everything is from a year ago." "Different better or different worse?" "Different better. So much better." Victoria took his hand, the gesture natural now, after months of slowly building intimacy. "I was thinking about that night at the holiday party, about how I felt so lost and empty and alone, about how getting drunk felt like the only way to stop feeling everything so intensely." "That was a hard night," Ethan agreed. "But it was also the beginning of everything good. If I hadn't lost control that night, if you hadn't helped me, if I hadn't shown up at your apartment the next morning, none of this would have happened. I'd still be in that corner office, still alone, still convinced that success meant not needing anyone." "Do you miss it? The company, the power, being CEO?" Victoria considered the question carefully. "Sometimes I miss the clarity of it, the simple metrics of success and failure. But mostly, no. I don't miss who I was. I don't miss the isolation. I don't miss building my entire identity around a job title." "What do you miss?" "The sense of purpose sometimes. The feeling that what I was doing mattered on a large scale." Victoria smiled. "But then I help Lily with her homework, or I work with a client to transform their company culture, or I just sit with you watching some terrible reality show and eating takeout, and I realize the scale was wrong. Impact isn't about how many people you influence. It's about how deeply you connect with the people right in front of you." Ethan pulled her closer. "You've become very wise." "I had a good teacher." They watched Lily for a while, content in the comfortable silence of people who'd learned to simply be together without needing to fill every moment with words. "I've been thinking," Victoria said eventually, "about the future, about what comes next for us. And I think I'm ready to stop being so careful, to stop treating this like it might fall apart any second, to actually build something permanent." Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I love Lily. I'm saying I want to be part of this family, if you'll have me. Not someday. Not eventually. Now." Victoria turned to face him fully. I know it's fast. I know we've only been together 6 months, but I also know that I'm more certain about this than I've been about anything in my entire life. Victoria, I'm not asking you to marry me, she interrupted quickly. Not yet, but I'm asking if I can move closer. Maybe get an apartment in your building or nearby, so I can be here more, so we can actually see what it's like to build a life together instead of just dating carefully around the edges of our separate lives. Ethan looked at this woman who'd come into his life like a storm and stayed like sunshine. This woman who'd been so lost and had found her way home through sheer courage and stubbornness. This woman who loved his daughter with the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd discovered family after a lifetime of isolation. Yes, he said simply. Move closer. Move in with us if you want. I don't care about the timeline or what's conventional. I just want you here. Victoria's smile was incandescent. Really? Really? I love you. Lily loves you, and life is too short to waste time being cautious about the things that matter most. When did you get so brave? When I met someone who showed me what bravery actually looks like. Ethan echoed her words from months ago. Lily chose that moment to race back over, grabbing both their hands. Come see the octopus. It has 8 arms, and it's super smart, and the lady said it can open jars and escape from tanks. She tugged them toward the next exhibit, chattering excitedly about octopus intelligence and whether they could learn to read. Victoria caught Ethan's eye over Lily's head, and they shared a look of perfect understanding. This was it, this messy, complicated, beautiful life they were building together. No corporate titles, no power dynamics, no careful boundaries designed to protect them from hurt. Just 2 people who'd been brave enough to be honest, vulnerable enough to ask for help, strong enough to rebuild their lives from the ground up when everything fell apart. Just love, in all its terrifying, transformative glory. That night, after Lily was asleep, and they were curled up on Ethan's couch with wine and the comfortable silence of people who didn't need constant conversation, Victoria looked at the photo of Maya on the shelf. Do you think she'd approve? Victoria asked quietly. Of us? Ethan followed her gaze to his wife's frozen smile. I think she'd be happy I found someone who makes me want to live again instead of just survive. Someone who loves Lily the way she deserves to be loved. Someone brave enough to blow up their entire life for the chance at something real. I hope you're right. I am. Ethan pulled Victoria closer. Maya believed love wasn't a finite resource, that loving someone new didn't diminish what we had, and I think she'd recognize you as someone worth loving. I'm going to try very hard to be worthy of that. You already are. They sat like that for a long time. 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their carefully controlled lives, who'd been brave enough to choose connection over safety, vulnerability over protection, love over fear. Outside, the city lights glittered against the dark sky. Inside, in a small apartment filled with crayon drawings and secondhand furniture and the accumulated evidence of an ordinary, extraordinary life, 2 people who'd almost missed each other held on tight and refused to let go. The night that should have meant nothing, a drunk CEO, a kind facilities manager, a simple act of decency, had shattered both their worlds. But from that wreckage, they'd built something neither could have imagined. Not a fairy tale, not a perfect romance, but something better. A real partnership between 2 people who'd learned that the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you completely and trust they'll stay anyway. And they did stay. Through the messy process of merging lives, through the challenges of blended family dynamics, through the ordinary struggles and joys of building something lasting. They stayed because love, real love, wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, being honest, choosing each other every single day. 1 year later, on a quiet Saturday morning that felt like any other, Ethan made pancakes while Lily set the table and Victoria helped with the precise fork placement that Lily insisted was crucial. The radio played softly. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The apartment smelled like coffee and maple syrup and home. Can Victoria do the bedtime story tonight? Lily asked through a mouthful of pancake. She does really good dragon voices. If she wants to, Ethan said, glancing at Victoria. I'd love to, Victoria said, and meant it with her whole heart. This was the life she'd built, not the one she'd planned, not the one anyone expected, but the one that mattered, the one that made every sacrifice, every hard choice, every moment of terror worth it. Because love, real, honest, messy, beautiful love, was always worth fighting for. And Victoria Hale, who'd once believed that needing nothing and no one was strength, had finally learned that the real strength was in opening your heart and trusting someone else to be gentle with it. She looked at Ethan across the kitchen table, at Lily chattering about school, at the life they'd built from the ruins of who they used to be, and knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Home.